What if the greatest resource in our communities, the people who live there, are the very ones we're losing? And what if the solution isn't for them to leave in search of a better life, but to create the kind of neighborhood they don't want to leave? That's exactly what today's guest has been doing, turning low status communities into thriving places where residents can build wealth, opportunity, and pride right where they are. Hey, everybody. I'm Steven Schauer, and welcome to Stories Sustain Us. This is the show where we explore the transformative power of human stories to inspire action for a more sustainable and equitable future. Today, you'll hear how one woman went from growing up in the South Bronx during the era of the burning Bronx to become an award-winning leader in urban revitalization. We'll talk about the pivotal moment her dog Xena led her to a hidden gem on the Bronx River, sparking the creation of an award-winning park. We'll explore her talent retention model for community development, her bold approach to restorative capitalism, and the innovative projects she's leading today, from a hip-hop themed coffee shop to a massive transit-oriented development that's designed to keep opportunity local. This is truly a story of resilience, creativity, and what it really takes to reclaim a community. For me, Majora Carter is a powerhouse. She's a real estate developer, urban revitalization strategy consultant, MacArthur Fellow, Peabody Award-winning broadcaster, and teacher at Princeton University. She's responsible for the creation of numerous economic developments, technology inclusion projects, green infrastructure initiatives, and job training systems. Her words, quote, "Nobody should have to move out of their neighborhood to live in a better one," end quote, are literally etched on the walls of the Smithsonian Museum of African American History and Culture in Washington, D.C. And they serve as the subtitle of her 2022 book, Reclaiming Your Community. Majora has firsthand experience pioneering sustainable economic development in one of America's most storied low-status communities, the South Bronx, as well as cities across North America and abroad. She and her team help develop the vision, strategies, and type of development that transforms low-status communities into thriving mixed-use local economies. Her ability to navigate complex socioeconomic currents has earned her 8 honorary doctorates, a long list of national awards, and speaking invitations around the globe. And through it all, Majora has stayed rooted in the community that raised her. Majora Carter doesn't just talk about change. She builds it block by block, business by business, and dream by dream. I am incredibly thrilled and grateful that she took time to speak with me. So get ready to hear how she's rewriting the rules of development to keep communities and the people who make them special thriving right where they are. Here on Stories Sustain Us, where we're inspiring action through the power of storytelling. Good morning, Majora. Welcome to Stories Sustain Us. I'm so thrilled to have you on my show. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to join me and my audience and share your story. I could talk to you probably for hours, but I know we got a limited time on your schedule. So we just heard the wonderful introduction about all the incredible work that you've been doing over a lifetime. It seems like you've probably done 5 lifetimes of work at this point.
Sometimes.
Yeah, I'm sure. But let's jump into your story, and I want to make the most of the time I have with you today. So, can you tell me a bit about what it was like? I know you were born and raised in the South Bronx, and I believe you're still there. So, what was life like for you growing up as a child? And what were some of those really pivotal moments that kind of helped shape you into the individual you are today?
Sure. But thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. But yeah, it's interesting because growing up in the South Bronx, and I grew up during a time, it was rather infamous. It was actually called the Burning Bronx because it was. And, years of particularly financial disinvestment, where banks were, and again, like in part because the federal government was just like, you don't really need to do that. The years of redlining,
Yeah,
white flight, all of it.
yeah,
And there was a whole, huge segments of the Bronx literally were places where there were banks would refuse to loan, right? And so in many cases, the buildings fell into disrepair. landlords or business owners were unable to get, capital or loans in order to redo the buildings. And sometimes insurance would pay, so they were intentionally torching their
Sure.
buildings. And we knew also because of just the age of the buildings, but some of them built at the turn of the century, needed that repair, and then that would happen as well. So I grew up, watching many buildings burn down, and it was a hard time. We also saw, drug addiction, and things like that in the neighborhood as well. But I also experienced some very beautiful, intense um, moments of community for the most part. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the thing. That's what I mostly remember. Knowing that even though times were very hard, for folks in the neighborhood, that it was still very much a community.
Yeah. Yeah.
After my brother was killed as a result of a drug war in the neighborhood, the way people gathered around my family and friends as a result of it was just like those things I'll never forget, because we were,
Yeah.
and also just like when we celebrated, everybody celebrated, with when anybody did anything good, and with just we realized that there was so much love and prosperity in our own way that we enjoyed that much being with each other.
Yeah. Now, I've heard some of your story from your TED Talks, and I'll share those links with my audience on the show notes as well. And in your first TED Talk, the 2006 TED Talk, you talk a little bit about your parents as well. That they were I think the generation that established your family in
Hmm.
the Bronx area, the South Bronx area. Tell me a little bit more about that, because it sounds like they were incredible people,
Yeah,
and yeah, I think in one of more your recent TED Talks, you are the manifestation of their wildest dreams.
I
So
am. I
tell
know
me
I
a bit
am.
about their story and that, because it seems like it's such an important part of your journey as well.
Sure. Yeah. So both of my parents were part of the Great Migration, which is when Blacks from the American South moved up north, escaping domestic terrorism that
Yeah,
was
yeah,
Jim Crow, and just the terrible discrimination that Black people experienced
of
down
course.
there.
Yeah, yeah.
So my dad from Georgia, my mom from South Carolina. My dad was only one generation out of enslavement,
Wow.
which means I'm only two, which
Yeah,
is kind of crazy.
it is.
Um,
Yeah, wow.
and but they came up north, and with the idea of like living in a place that actually kind of respected them, and it gave them the ability to search for their American dream. And through that, we were eventually able to settle, here, like literally 2 blocks away from where I'm sitting. My father was a Pullman porter, and his main line was the New York, New Haven line. This
Yeah,
was back in the day, in the early part of the century of the 20th century, when rich men owned the actual railroad lines as well. And so he worked on the New York New Haven line that was owned by, I don't remember who. And but anyway, he would pass this one station in Hunts Point. It was called Hunts Point in the Bronx. And he would look at it and knew that there was like houses, the really beautiful little houses nearby. And his dream was that one day he would own one of them.
yeah.
And at one point he won $15,000 in a horse race. And then he was able to, he took the subway up, and then because at that point the trains weren't stopping at that station,
Hmm.
because it was almost at the end of like the rails becoming, almost obsolete in this
Sure,
country.
sure.
And then he went, and the was able to negotiate a direct sale with a family, an Italian family called the Sacco, Sacco. Hope I meet some of their descendants at some point in my life. And
Yeah,
he was able to negotiate a sale because he won $15,000 in a horse race, and he had cash that he carried back across the country, because he didn't want to put it in a bank, because as a Black
sure.
man, he was just like didn't trust them,
The
and at that
risks.
point
Yeah, yeah,
he
yeah,
should not have. But
yeah,
yeah, negotiated the sale, and that's where. And then he later on met my mom, and they had several kids together, and I'm the last one that they had.
yeah. Well,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
incredible. And from what you've shared in other bits and pieces that I've picked up, it sounds like it was a loving family and a supportive family
yeah,
that again helped you become the person that you grew into becoming.
totally.
Yeah, and you also at one point hinted at your high school experience.
Mm.
And I'm just curious, again, trying to put the puzzles of your life together, like how did you become this powerhouse of real estate development, and this really moving the world into a better direction. Were there experiences in school or just in the community you grew up in, or both? When did you kind of start to realize these are the direction in life that you wanted to go to, or
Yeah,
did it really reside around that dog, the dog story that you told? I mean, I'm assuming it started a little bit before
a little
that, but
before.
yeah.
I mean, my mom really cultivated my love of learning. I mean, I
Yeah.
think I got it from her, how she supported me. Like, my mom, if I don't think she went past the third grade. Um,
Yeah.
but she recognized early on that, I remember I was reading and when I was 3 years old, because I know this because at 4 years old, I read all of my birthday cards out loud to my mom.
Wow.
And after I took the dollar that was in them,
Yeah, yeah, of course.
out. It was just like, oh, and Aunt Josephine wrote blah 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 blah, and it
Yeah.
was really kind of sweet. And so she would we only had one television, a old black and white one, and she, regardless of all my other brothers and sisters, she would make sure that when educational TV was on, Sesame Street, Mr. Rogers, Electric
Yeah.
Company,
Yeah. Yeah.
Majora was in front. That's what she watched. It was just
Yep.
like, Majora needs to watch her educational programs. I'll never forget my mother saying that. And but another thing she did when I discovered that I loved writing, she had a friend actually who lived literally around the corner from us, whose daughter was getting her master's, and I don't even remember what it was, but to tell you the truth, but I was about 6 and 7 years old,
Yeah.
and so Miss Flanagan's daughter, Gail, that was her name. She would, I would write all my stories in this little notebook, and then I would take them to her to critique them, and she would discuss with me whether how to make them better, and it was just one of the most incredible experiences that I do think, first of all, it opened me up to the fact that there were people who wanted to help and who could
Mm.
help.
Mm.
And I feel like that is something that I was just blessed enough to experience early. So it
Yeah.
left me in a place where it's just sort of like, well, okay, yeah, there's people out there who want to be helpful. And that I think is probably the biggest lesson that I take from that. In addition to the fact that, I had a private writing tutor, which was just nobody thinks about like that for little black girls from the South Bronx, but I did. And there's that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Kind of
I
cool.
love that. And you made some happy memories and pop up in my brain too, of Sesame Street and Electric Company and Mr. Robin. Those things so formative in my young life as well.
100%.
So I appreciate that connection and that tie, and like, oh yeah, that was so important to me as well. And that sense of community, and that sense, it just kind of triggered this memory of Mr. Rogers talking about, look for the helpers, look,
Mm,
and how you just described,
yeah.
you found some in your early
Yeah.
life, and that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. So, so you're moving on into high school. Was there ever a time in your life where you were thinking, I need to get out of the South Bronx? Because I mean,
Oh,
you certainly talk so much about how do we retain talent and restore these communities. I'm just curious, were you ever tempted to leave yourself?
oh, totally.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think I started planning my escape, you know, right after my brother was killed.
Sure.
Um, at the beginning of that, he died at the end of the summer of August in 1974.
Yeah.
And when I was going into the third grade. And at the beginning of the summer, I watched both buildings at the top and the end of my block burn down. So people that I knew and loved had to move out, and it was just sort of like. In the end, my brother was killed, and I was like, "Oh my God!" I mean,
Yeah.
I was still 7,
Yeah. That's so
and
much for a young
and I
brain
was like,
to
"I
take.
don't want
Wow.
to
Yeah.
be here. No,
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
is awful." And so I knew education was the way out.
Yeah.
I was told that a lot, and it's like, you can grow up and be somebody, and I was just like, oh yeah, I've got a great big beautiful brain. My mommy said so, so I know it's true.
Yeah.
And I'm going to grow up and I'm going to go to I want to go to the Bronx High School of Science because I heard that was a really, really good school, and that through that I would go to what I called a name school, which in my head was a school that everybody knew the name of. So it was like
Yeah.
Ivy League or something like that. And I was like, okay, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
And I was on that path. And I did all those things and I got out.
Yeah.
Um, and I only came back home because I was broke when I started graduate school, like a lot of people are, and
Yeah.
I needed a cheap place to stay. I was going to NYU, and the cheapest place I could find, obviously, was my mommy and daddy's house, my old bedroom.
Yeah.
That's that. And it was only there. And for the first like 1.5 years of my graduate program, um, I spent zero time in the neighborhood. I would literally like crack of dawn. I was out of the house, getting on the subway, going downtown, and I'd spend the entire day, down there, and get back home super late at night. Because there was, as far as I could tell, nothing in the neighborhood and nothing that was going to keep me here. The
Yeah.
buildings had been, rehabbed and all that stuff, but it was still a fairly unpleasant, there's just nothing there. I mean, that's how I felt.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until like I actually was in got into this like writers core program, where we were teaching writing in schools in the Bronx or wherever. And I was super excited to meet this guy who kept talking about this place that he had co-founded with some other folks and it was like this art center, da, 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 and it turns out it was actually in my neighborhood. But because I would leave before the crack of dawn and come back super late at night, never saw it. And through that, when I started connecting with that, that's when I started to like feel for my neighborhood,
Yeah.
because I saw people just like me. There were artists, there were like really interesting people who were just super excited about building community together. And that's what made me like reevaluate, or start to reevaluate everything that I saw in my neighborhood before that. And it was just like, oh, no, this is like, look, the community is about community. It's about people in it. And I got to actually see and experience them and realize, oh, I'm still a part of this. And it was wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Love that. So so building on that then, that you're now becoming part of this community again, the community you grew up in, you're starting to feel more of a part of it as a young adult. What was your first like entry point or
Mm,
project that you really started to work on? Because I
yeah.
know again the Green the Bronx and the park, the Hunt Point Park and everything, but it sounds to me like your story started before that.
Yeah. I think,
Yeah.
you know what? That's a good question, because I'm trying to, in my mind, remember like how it actually did start. But anyway, I got very, involved, you know, in this organization, um, got myself hired, and we did things like a film festival. It was called Represent the Real, because I was actually a film major and did
Right
some
on.
very fun films actually.
Yeah.
And so wanted to organize an international film festival, which we did. And it was amazing. And we had South Bronx Film and Video Festival, and again, international. It was super, super cool. But it was, I think, around that time, that's when we started hearing that the city was planning on building a huge waste facility on the waterfront.
Yeah.
And that's when I was like, wait, what? I just rediscovered how beautiful my neighborhood can be. And because of the people in it. And then I learned that we had this huge we as a community already had about 30 to 40% of all New York City's waste facilities right within a 1 square mile radius. And I
Yeah.
thought, oh my God, you've got to be kidding. And and I realized, and so it was actually kind of good that I had been out of the neighborhood for a little while, going to school, etc. Um, and that I realized what really was happening was that because we happen to be a poor community of color, predominantly Latino and Black, then that it seemed we were being openly, and poor, we were being
Hmm.
openly discriminated against, from the earliest days, like, the light manufacturing that we once had, like in the up from the 40s, up until the 60s, when the neighborhood started to burn. Um, was replaced by waste facilities and power plants and things like that. So we were just like, so we were slowly being poisoned. And then the
Yeah.
city wanted to continue that with another huge facility. And all I could think was like, wow, it's because we are poor and of color. And
Yeah.
there was lots of historical, evidence around the country around environmental inequality.
Yeah.
And I was definitely a part of that activism to really, help the city rethink its very discriminatory practices. But so I definitely worked on that, on the straight advocacy. But for me, I really wanted to focus on how do you help people like really see the value of their community changing, because you know what, bottom line is we were still a bunch of folks who were kind of used to being forgotten and
Sure.
maligned and neglected, and you saw it sometimes. It's like people were just kind of like, well, yeah, so they're building another waste facility here, like what else can we expect? And it was just
Right.
like, oh my god. And I think as an artist, I was just like, I think the problem was that people didn't see anything different, any change. And you wouldn't honestly demonstrably see anything, even if we did fight against and win, the battle for that one station, you wouldn't see anything different. You wouldn't
Right.
necessarily experience anything differently. So you're not going to get all that excited about it. So I think that's like seeing that kind of made me realize that way that I wanted to work was more along building projects so that people could see and feel and experience something
Yeah.
different.
Yeah.
and and that's why I started working on things like honestly, I mean, we did one thing just to like raise awareness. Like we did this one funny thing called a garbage parade, where we had dancers and everything dress up in like in like crazy garbage, outfits made out of uh like but out of trash, and being able to recycle it. It was just so silly, but it was super fun. And people were like, these are crazy people. Like I actually designed a peplum dress made out of like blue recycling bags. So it was one shoulder. It was very cute.
Nice.
But my favorite thing was actually starting I got a chance to find out about this. Let me just go back, because the funny thing is that all this advocacy got the attention of some other folks.
Yeah.
And one of the things we did was create this. And so we kept getting get these meetings from this young lady named Jenny Hoffner, who was at that point, she was funded through the U.S. Forest Service to the Parks Department in New York City. And her job was to bring attention to the threatened rivers in New York. And the biggest threatened river in New York City is, well, the only freshwater river in New York City is the Bronx River.
The Bronx. Yeah.
And so she started going around to folks like that were kind of anywhere near the Bronx River. And I knew that we had a river because we had a parkway named after it, but we were never able to see it really
Sure.
or
You
get
cut
to
off
it
from it
because there
entirely.
was industry all along it. And so it was that. And
Yeah.
so, but she kept they were like, there was this small grant program that she kept telling people about. She just literally found people who were active in those areas. And so, of course, she met with me several times. I just thought she was nice. So I was like, sure, I'll meet with you. But come to find out, it's like I had a dog, and who I'd go jogging with her. And at one point, we took a little bit of a different path, and she pulled me down into what I thought was just another illegal dump,
Yeah.
in the area. And it was like from the street, it just looked trashy. So I was like, I'm
Sure.
not going in there. But my dog, who was like 85 pounds and kind of crazy, and
Dog was
literally,
insistent.
she was very insistent, and she was fast. She was a young one at the time, so she could
Yeah.
do all sorts of crazy things with me, and just pulled me into this dump. And honestly, if I hadn't had an 85-pound dog with me, there's no way I would have done it.
Sure.
But it turns out that this dump dead ended at the Bronx River.
Yeah. You could see
And
the river.
and it was so amazing. And as long as I didn't look back to the trash that weeds over my head behind me and just looked at the expanse of the river.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It was like 150 feet, like it was like 6 o'clock in the morning. So it was so beautiful. Sunlight glinting off of it. It looked like little birds like lighting off the water. It was magic.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I just thought, oh, I need to go back home and write that little grant proposal for the seed grant. And we did. And we did all sorts of really fun, crazy programming even before we had any real money. We, spent that money on like lunches for people who helped, clean up.
Yeah, yeah,
You know, um,
of course.
we were able to get some folks, like we're able to get like larger companies like our local utility, Con Ed, to come and like donate, their heavy equipment people, to like move piles of trash and get rid of it for us, which was amazing. Took a lot of time off. We created like a tiny little, like a sort of a fake, landscaping within the neighborhood. It was, and we actually bought canoes so we can get people out on the waterfront,
Awesome.
which was,
Yeah,
it was just amazing.
yeah,
And so through that, and then we were able to leverage that little tiny seed grant of $10,000 into 3 million, which then became the Hunts Point Riverside Park. And now it's a national award winning park. But
yeah,
it's always, I mean, for our community, even when it was when it was in its beta version, with
yeah,
like wood chips around as opposed to like a beautiful, bed of grass and really nice landscaping. It was still just like, it was magical.
yeah,
And so we really appreciate that. Yeah,
yeah.
it's really cool.
What was the dog's name?
Oh, her name was Xena. She was
Xena,
named after, was that the 90s?
the
The
warrior princess?
warrior princess. Yes,
That's
yes, yes,
awesome.
yes. I hope
It,
I meet Lucy Lawless at some point in my life. It'll be very fun.
is there, because I'm a big believer of giving credit where credit is due. So Xena seems like an important part of this story. So I want to make sure dogs have an intuition, right? They know things that we just don't know.
Oh,
And what a grateful
yeah. I
experience to have
really,
Xena pull you into a place that you wouldn't have otherwise
I never would
gone,
have gone.
and
Never.
what a turn of events. So thank you, Xena, for
Yep.
pulling you along and saying, no, you got to come see the river, because she knew it was there, and she knew the possibilities. And that story of building a place, like you talked about, like showing people a vision and then like having it be seen so that they could see that there's something more and there can be something better. That's so powerful. And that's, it seems like that's something that you've been doing then nonstop ever since.
Yep.
And I could, ask you questions about all kinds of projects I know you've worked on, but I'd like to open up to you. Like, what do you want to share? What are you most proud of? I know the book that we can see behind you, Reclaiming
Mhm.
Your Community. So
Yeah.
many accomplishments. Your hip hop cafe and everything else that I just know you're known for. What are you working on today? What success
Yeah.
do you wanna be proud of?
Mhm.
Tell me a little bit more about your journey rather than me just peppering you with questions.
No, that's fine. I love questions. Um, but it's so fun because do feel like all that I've done really, in the 90s and the late 90s and the early 2000s really did kind of prepare me for what I'm doing now. Like I really do feel like it's just a very natural progression,
Yeah,
because, back in the day, um, and I think it's all activism. People like to think that community activists are just like it's a very particular thing. Either you're, holding a sign and protesting in the streets, or you're doing something so close to the ground that, like literally, like you're either working on, doing streetscaping projects, or, working on a park or a garden, and nothing else matters. And I feel like it's all, as far as I'm concerned, part of development, you
yeah,
know, because I think the development of a park, I started a green collar job training and placement system back in the day, um, which also helped people have a personal and financial stake in improving the environment. And
yeah,
now I'm doing real estate development, which, if you really stop and think about what real estate development is, it's literally taking on a role, that and changing the environment so that you can have an influence and an impact on people's lives.
yeah.
And that could be positive or negative. And I
Absolutely.
do think that I am uniquely positioned and qualified, to do the kind of creative real estate development that improves the quality of life for people in the low status communities first of all, the one that I'm from, but
Sure.
I do think bringing a model, for other types, for others around the country, and low status, we use the term low status rather than, poor, disadvantaged, even though frankly, most low status communities are poor or low income and disadvantaged in some way, shape or form. They can be rural or urban. So they could be inner cities or Native American reservations. They could even be poor white towns,
Sure.
where there was industry, but it's long gone now. Um, and but the interesting thing is that in all of those places, there are areas where inequality is assumed.
Yeah. Language matters. I like that term, low status. I mean, I
Yeah,
think it's a more honest
yeah,
and also maybe less stigmatizing type of language. So I
yeah, and
think
it takes
that's
the burden off. I think it takes the burden off of the people in those
off the residents.
communities
Exactly. Yeah.
because it's just like because people from outside and inside those neighborhoods are looking at it as like, oh, it can never be anything except what it is,
Yeah.
and that's the stigma I
Yeah.
think that people feel.
Yeah.
And so that's why, like, there's why there, I think, such a Cinderella story around people from neighborhoods like that. Oh, they grew up and they got out of there. Oh, they're measuring success by how far they get away from them. Oh, they did great, but look at them now. And it's just like, well, what does that mean for those neighborhoods? I
Right.
mean, we are literally sitting in a country where we have completely, I think, disengaged with like the fact that, first of all, every person has a capacity to be incredible.
Yeah.
And so why are we not creating, the kind of infrastructure so that people from low status communities of all types, whether they're artistically or academically, even athletically engaged, feel like they can create value for their own lives in those neighborhoods,
Yeah.
as opposed to measuring success by how far they get away.
Yeah.
And again, also being, inspirations for people around them. And I use, so we have a talent retention, community development strategy, all that
Yeah.
to tell you that, because that's what this book is about. It's simply about the kind of community development strategy that what we assume is that there isn't a community in this country that does not have amazingly beautiful, talented people in it. And that they're born there, they're raised there, but they're expected to leave.
Yeah.
It's brain drain.
Yeah.
And because we think of brain drain only happening in developing countries. No, it happens in low status communities
Neighborhoods.
every single day in America.
Yep.
And that's a reckoning we need to have. But what would happen if we created the infrastructure for people to stay and to reinvest in our own communities? Oh my gosh, like what would that do?
Yeah. That's so beautiful.
What would it do? So
Yeah.
that's what we're trying to do. So all that to say is that I'm so excited that, when I realized what a real estate developer could do, and is that we could create the right kind of infrastructure so that people feel as though they don't have to move out of their neighborhoods to live in a better way.
Yeah.
And when we realize the kind of things that made people feel like the stickiness to want to stay where they are, wasn't that hard. It was little things like, because we did a lot of market research, which is basically in the form of surveys and focus groups, like within our own
Sure.
community, hundreds and hundreds of them. We realized that people were not like dreaming about leaving because they felt unsafe or there was high crime, because actually crime rates have been going, down like since the 70s and still are. It was mostly like, there's nothing to do.
Yeah. I need a cafe. I need, the grocery store
Yeah.
that has fresh fruits and vegetables in it. Right.
Or, just anything that builds community, not the kind
Yeah.
of, community centers that, a normal developer would build, like sometimes in the basement of a building, just to say that he built
That
something
they
for the
have. Sure.
community,
Check the
where there's
box.
no light or
Yeah.
and it was just like, really, like you wouldn't hang out there, you wouldn't
Yeah.
want your kids to go there,
Right.
so why you build it for us? It's like, oh, because that's what happens in low
Yeah.
status communities.
That's the
You know,
minimum that we could get away with.
precisely.
Yeah.
And so
yeah.
we're like,
Yeah.
so the thing, so I ended up we opened up. We were able to acquire some very cheap leases, from a local landowner in the neighborhood, and our goal was to get someone else to open up a cafe, because that was a big thing that people wanted. And we used another one for a tech social enterprise that we wanted to do, and we did that, which was really amazing. But then we couldn't find anybody who wanted to open up a cafe. Starbucks was not interested in coming. And then we realized, oh God, we're gonna have to do it ourselves. And so first year we partnered with a group called Birch Coffee, which was wonderful. But then we realized that their model wasn't going to quite work here. They were just mostly like, sort of like third wave coffee, which was like you just steam the milk, and it's just like, and it's this so artisanal, you can't add like flavors or whipped cream, and that's just not what our community
Sure.
wanted. So
Sure.
we had to change that out, and then we really leaned into our culture, which is like the South Bronx is the birthplace of hip hop. So we just
Yeah, right on.
and we're often called the Boogie Down, which is another name for the South Bronx. So
Yeah.
we created a cafe called the Boogie Down Grind, and it's a hip hop themed coffee shop. Like our baristas, are just they're the DJs, and we plastered the wall with like early hip hop albums, and like the flyers, which were done on a mimeograph machine. Some of your folks might not even know what that is.
Yeah. I remember. We're of a similar generation, so
Exactly. It was like, that's so funny. And so we found some of those original flyers, and we're able to like copy them and paste them up on the wall. And it's just like, it's like you're walking into a little museum, and we've done everything from open mics, or the community has come in and
yeah.
done open mics, book readings, book signings. We have a philosophy workshop, that's frequented by Bronx, like literally Bronx artists. It's fantastic. And so we're super excited about, and you could also get really great coffee and tea there. And then that same little rail station that, captured my father's eye when
Yeah.
the train would go under it,
Love
and
that
made him
story.
think like I should live in this neighborhood. I acquired it a few years ago,
Yeah.
and we're transforming it into an event hall. So, and it was designed by this amazing architect named Cass Gilbert. And so we were, and when the building was essentially abandoned a few years ago, and the raccoons moved in, and it was just a hot mess, I gotta tell you. And
Yeah.
we were able to acquire it for $1, and a
Wow.
lot more after that, in order to like
Of course.
demolition and get it up to code, so that we could like have hosted events like amazing, the kids call them pop-up shops now, but flea markets.
Yeah.
um it took me a while to understand what they were talking about, I'm not gonna lie. And it's like, what? And then so it's got this beautiful vaulted ceiling, so the acoustics are just incredible. So we're working on now, and hopefully getting financing very, very soon, so that we can really do the kind of rehab that it needs. Because right now we don't have air conditioning or heat, so we can only open it during the
During
summer,
the summer months,
or
sure.
and the early and the fall.
Yeah.
But it really is incredible. And I have
Yeah.
to say, but the big project that we're working on is a transit oriented development, because we're getting access to our major transportation hub, which we have not had in over 100 years. Like for, yeah, it's been that long. Oh my
Yeah.
God.
Wow.
From our part of the Bronx, into Manhattan, and going in points north. So we'll be able to be in Midtown Manhattan in 15 minutes, which is amazing. So our goal is to, build at least 300 units of housing, including 100 units of low income home ownership, so that we can help folks develop and create equity
Start building
within
that generational
their
wealth.
family
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And also about 100,000 square feet of both light manufacturing, and other types of commercial, for job creation, and then also a 250 room hotel, because that is the kind of thing that makes me, because it also means that, those, first of all, those are accessible jobs. And we know that there's going to be a need for more hotels, where actually New York City doesn't have a whole lot of them, to tell you
Yeah.
the truth right now.
Yeah.
People are staying in Jersey when they come visit New York right now. It's crazy. And so we want to like get it. And, we have, for a whole host of reasons, since the change in administration, we've definitely seen less tourism up here, but we think
Sure.
that's going to change, hopefully within a few years.
Yep.
And so we want to be ready. And I'm so excited because so we're trying to work in a partnership. We're entitled trying to get that project, to the table. But our goal is to stay mostly on the hotel side development because I really want to help curate that. And I'd love to be able to name it after one of the she was a forgotten story in the Bronx. I mean, excuse me, not in the Bronx, in American history, but her name was Elizabeth Gloucester, and she was a exceedingly successful real estate developer and an entrepreneur in the late 1800s.
Yeah.
And she actually owned one of the most successful hotels out in Brooklyn. And, and it was just so, Black woman, but this place was the kind of place where both, Black folks and white folks got together, and it was just like, mwah, like apparently chef's kiss, like an amazing, amazing place. And she was also a great abolitionist. She supported Frederick Douglass, and this was a wealthy
Wow.
woman who did all
Yeah.
sorts of amazing things. And so I have a dream that I will, pay homage to her.
Yeah.
And name it after her, which is Elizabeth. Her name is Elizabeth Gloucester,
Yeah.
and do like a same kind of amazing hotel, that's still very much, a part of the community, but still, creating value and jobs and the kind of amenities that also the community can be a part of, but also, successfully houses,
Yeah.
folks that need to come to the city for a little while. Yeah,
I cannot wait to stay there.
me too.
So what a through line from, this honoring this person's legacy who needs to be honored and remembered, and through line to building your own legacy. I mean, what a I can't wait to be there. So looking forward to you getting it done, because I know you're going to get it done.
I
I
so
know it's going to
yes,
happen.
that's what I'm.
So I have never visited New York, and I'm putting it on. It's of course on the to-do list, but now it's definitely on the to-do list that
Awesome.
I got a place to stay someday
Yes, you do.
when I get out there to finally visit that part of the country. So
Awesome.
thank you for sharing that dream and that vision, because
Thank you.
I think we talk these things into life, and
Yes.
so
Amen.
yeah, it's happening.
Amen.
It's happening. I see it already. Well, so I got a little bit of your time left. I know we're getting close to your time. I hope we can keep you a couple minutes beyond the top of the hour, because I had some technical difficulties on my side. So I appreciate if we can stretch a little bit longer, but
Absolutely.
I also want to be very respectful of your time. So, um, what's your call to action, Majora? I mean, I'm super excited and to chat with you, and just I want to get out there and just continue the work that you're doing, follow your lead, and really help make the world a better place. That because I love the term. I wrote it down. I was listening to one of your TED Talks as I was preparing for this, and this idea of restorative capitalism.
Mhm.
That you've embraced capitalism. We should embrace it, but embrace it for the benefits that it can bring for a community, not just
Yeah,
for those few at the top, so to speak. The kind of capitalism we kind of have now.
absolutely.
Um, so what's your call to action for folks? How can people get involved, support you, learn about your consulting organization? Where can people get your book? Just what do you want people to do to support your work and support their
Sure.
communities?
Well, I mean, thank you for bringing up like literally the term restorative capitalism, because the restorative economics in general, that if we can recognize that, look, capitalism's a tool. It can be used for good or ill. I mean, it's like Desmond Tutu said it best. I think it's, like a knife. Think of a knife. You could use it to cut bread and share with a friend, or you can use it to stab them.
Mm-hmm.
And same tool, agnostic.
Yeah.
So how about we think about, the fact that we don't have to exploit like the folks at the bottom in order to create wealth at the top. And I also think we can reevaluate what wealth at the top actually means,
Yeah. Sure.
because
We need to
that's
do that.
really where we need to be and
Yeah.
thinking about is like, why is there that top? And and I think the tools that we have, do have the capacity to not like exploit folks the way that it
Yeah.
does.
These are just choices we're making.
It totally is.
Hmm.
So it's just like, we don't have to be that scuzzy. We
Yeah.
don't. I just watched The Big Short the other night and I was just like, oh my God, like at any moment, anybody could have just been like, this is really horrible. We can't do this. That led the things that led to the 2008 housing crisis that
Sure.
literally destroyed so many people.
Yeah.
Um, I'm sorry, but that's like top of my mind.
Yeah.
That is
No,
the
what
exact thing.
it's, I think
But I
that's
was just like,
the world we're living in. We,
it is. And have
this
lived in
doesn't
more.
just happen. We created it.
We created it. So, and but if we can create that kind of awfulness,
Yeah.
we can create some beautiful stuff.
Amen. Absolutely. We can. Yeah.
And I feel like, but we have to acknowledge, that low status communities exist. We kind of did that.
Yeah.
And but we don't have to keep doing it. We
Right.
can create new opportunities for wealth creation, and talent retention in the communities that need it. Because if we do that, then quite frankly, people, if they feel like they're getting all their needs and their aspirations met in place, then what do you get? Ultimately, you get the social and economic fabric of communities all over the country being stronger.
Yeah.
And that's what this talent retention approach to community development actually means. So part of me just wants people to read my daggone book,
Yeah.
watch my TED Talks, just to be like, it's not crazy that we can rethink this. And there's stories in it about other places that are looking at that too. Um, and I really do feel like, so you can just buy my book wherever you buy books. It's everywhere. And I appreciate that. And thank you for that. Cause I sometimes, believe it or not, forget to do it. And, and at some point, one of the strategies that, we didn't do too much in the book, because of when it was written, but we've discovered that crowdfunding, it's a way for just regular people to essentially invest in real estate development projects. We're definitely going to be doing it for both Bronxlandia, which is our event hall, and probably also for the larger project that we do. And I feel like that if more people could learn about that and
Yeah.
start thinking about where in their own communities can actually use that kind of support and support those folks. Like we're, as a small developer who doesn't have, the kind of godfather or godmother, but usually they're godfathers, like the proverbial uncle in the business.
Sure.
Um,
Sure.
Support folks who are trying to do good development. We are all out there and we need some help. Maybe it's like guaranteeing a loan that otherwise, somebody's uncle would do. But our friends and family don't have that kind of capital to do it with. Think about that and like, what other ways can you support if you live in a low status community, who's doing the good work, and support them, whether it's like buying, from their local store. And you don't have to do it all the time, just occasionally. Like you'd be surprised, like just like the kind of impact that local businesses can have on the economy,
Yeah.
specifically in a local area and what they mean. And so I encourage people to do that in every way they possibly can.
And I love all that, and I'll make sure to reemphasize that in the show notes and my closing as well. Do you want to mention your consulting firm, just in
Oh,
case
sure, sure,
folks want to reach out to you
yeah,
and figure out how to bring your talent and your energy and your
yeah,
wisdom to
yeah,
their
yeah,
communities? How can they get in touch with you? I'm assuming your website's the best way to
yeah.
go.
Yep.
So what
Yes.
is that?
And we really are urban revitalization strategists, although we have also worked in rural areas as well.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we really love doing is helping, municipalities of any kind, size, actually, or even just local groups be working on their own talent retention strategies for their communities. And, as a revitalization strategy and tool. So definitely we love, to hear from you, work with you. And the best way is through our website, which is the majoracartergroup.com.
Perfect. Well, I'll make
Yeah.
sure that gets on our show notes as well, so people can reach out to you and continue to bring your good works from the Bronx and spread that all over the country, because it's needed everywhere. I mean,
Yes, it is.
the redlining and the horrible decisions that were made to create the low status communities, that's just not isolated to the South Bronx, as you're well
Nope.
aware. That is, I've from San Antonio where I grew up to Seattle
Mm.
where I'm living now,
Wow.
different parts of the country, but the same thing happened.
Yes,
So we created these low status communities, and we can create something better.
I agree.
And I think
Yes,
it's our I appreciate how you also said, like capitalism isn't necessarily about doing what's right or moral, which is why I like that regenerative capitalism idea, because we can use that triple bottom line approach. We can
yeah,
show people that we can do things differently and better to raise everyone up, not just a few
yes,
at the top.
yep,
So there's better ways of doing it, and that's what I'm trying to do with this show, is share incredible stories like yours, to let people know there's the hope out there. We can do things differently and better. So
yes,
with that transition, can I talk to you about your hope? Can I talk to you about what your hopes for the future are real quick before
yeah,
I got to let you go? I know we're a little bit
totally.
over
Like,
time, but
no,
I
it's
appreciate,
okay.
yeah, thank you for
My
sticking with me a little bit longer.
Sure. My big hope, is that, I, as a Christian, like part of me is just like I just want to make sure that I like remember the ministry that I gave myself, based on who I follow.
Yeah,
Um, but it really is loving my neighbor. Like in my work really is the manifestation of that.
yeah,
And so I'm just as complicated and as hard as things get, and they really are. Like I'm just trying to keep my heart soft so
yeah,
that I can continue to do that with um with joy.
yeah,
That's really my hope because it is getting harder. It really is. And and watching things around the world doesn't um make
yeah,
me any happier. Yeah. But I still really do believe that you work locally, where you are. And it actually can sustain you. And so right now I'm literally praying, for the a great partner, in these projects that we're trying to get across the table.
yeah.
And then it shall be done.
It's coming. It's
Mhm.
coming.
Yep.
May I ask a follow-up question
Sure.
to your vision, and hope for a better future of loving your neighbor and keeping a soft heart, and really trying to uphold the values of your faith tradition, and how you treat your community and your fellow human. Um, can I ask you, why is that important to you? Why is that such an important dream to have, and a hope to have?
Hmm. Well, and mostly because if you don't see the humanity in other people, they're othered, which means they're not. It just doesn't matter, like on a certain level. Like for example, I just read a really interesting report about how it was done like almost a decade ago, but I'm pretty sure it's the results are the same. But white folks completely underestimated the differences between black wealth and white wealth, and in part because they just had no idea
Sure.
of what they were just like, well, everything must be fine. And even though this is we are such a segregated country,
Yeah.
and so out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah.
And so it was just like, huh. And then the other thing was that, well, since they're probably like equally, what we're okay, they must be okay. It was like, oh, and if they weren't, then it's kind of their problem. And what did they do to be in that
Sure.
situation? Not
Sure.
understanding the
The
historical,
systems that
inequities.
created it. Yeah.
Yep.
Yep.
And I found that really interesting, but also very telling.
Sure.
And but look, people are people. And so I'm not going to put myself on a pedestal, even though I happen to be black living in a community like mine. I still have to keep my heart like soft and open to ensure that I'm loving up on my community the way that Jesus loves me.
Yeah.
And obviously that's not always easy to do. Because people are crazy and
Yeah.
they awful at times.
Truth.
It's just like, oh. And for those of us who really are like natural born introverts, and like I am.
All right. So we had a little technical difficulty, but we're back. And I'm going to ask Majora her last question, and then I'm going to thank her for her patience and time because I've kept her a lot longer than scheduled. So thank you so much for staying, and apologize for the technical difficulties. But the last question I have for you around hope for the future. You've explained, what your vision is and why it's important to you. The last question is, imagine now for a moment that the world that you've just described for us is the world we're living in today, and tell me how that makes you feel.
Oh my gosh. All I could think was deep rest, something I've rarely experienced. And it's my own fault. I mean, I should just like take the rest. But it just feels like there's just no need for me to stress anymore, which would be such a beautiful, beautiful feeling to have. And it's coming. Like it is coming. And yeah, that's how I feel. I just feel like people can just rest because they know they can afford to be gracious and generous with each other because
Perfect.
everybody has enough.
Perfect. Well, Majora, thank you so much for your time. I'm going to join you on that walk and try to build that world that you just described for us, because
And
that's the world I want to live in also. So thank you so much for all you do to make the world a better place. And I can't wait to visit you in your
I
hotel one of these
know.
days. So
Thank you.
I'll leave you with the last word. And again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much and thank you for having me, Stephen. I really appreciate it. All right.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.
What an inspiring interview with Majora Carter. In this episode, we explored her journey from growing up in the South Bronx during the burning Bronx era to becoming a nationally recognized leader in urban revitalization. We heard how her talent retention model and vision for restorative capitalism are transforming low status communities into thriving mixed use neighborhoods, and how one morning run with her dog Xena led to the creation of Hunts Point Riverside Park. Majora shared the importance of investing in people, preserving cultural identity, and creating opportunities right where you are so no one has to leave their neighborhood to live in a better one. Majora's message about restorative capitalism really resonated with me. As she pointed out, capitalism is simply a tool. It's agnostic. It's like a knife. It can be used to harm or it can be used to help. If we want to build a sustainable world, we need to embrace that reality and use the tool for good, for the benefit of the many, not just for the few at the top. Look, capitalism rarely responds to moral or emotional arguments, but it does respond to economic incentives and to the bottom line. That's why restorative capitalism, harnessing economic power to create equitable, sustainable, community focused growth, that's why that's such a powerful idea. Now, I'd like to encourage everybody, let's get behind that idea. Let's follow Majora's lead and help advance the restorative capitalism movement. To learn more about her work and how you can get involved, visit majoracartergroup.com. And be sure to purchase a copy of her book, Reclaiming Your Community. You can get it from her website, or even better, try your neighborhood bookstore, which will allow you to support your local community while supporting Majora's work. I also love how Majora embraced her identity as an artist, starting in film at NYU and later applying that creative vision to community revitalization. Artists have always played a critical role in pointing out what's wrong with society and imagining a better way forward. If you're an artist wondering what you have to do with sustainability, the answer is simple: everything. Use your talent, your voice, your medium to raise awareness, inspire action, and shape the future you want to see. Your artistry can extend beyond the canvas, the stage, or the screen into economic development, urban design, or local organizing. So please, use your artistic gifts. Go out there and make the world a better place. Reclaim your community. And please be sure to support other local artists, local shops, local entrepreneurs. Back the kind of restorative, inclusive development Majora talked about. And get involved in politics and policy. Look, I'm not here to tell you who to vote for, but I will encourage you to vote and use your voice. Remember, the systems we live under are man-made. They're not fixed. They're not like gravity. We can change them, and change starts locally. Majora's story is proof that one person's vision, persistence, and love for their community can spark transformation. So take action. Join a community board. Volunteer for a neighborhood cleanup. Mentor a young person. Organize a pop-up market for local creators. Every step matters. And if you'd like to help support Stories Sustain Us, please visit the support page at storiessustainus.com. You can like, share, and subscribe to the show. You can follow me on social media, leave me a comment, or if you're able, offer financial support to help offset production costs. Whether financial or not, all your support is deeply appreciated. It keeps the show going and helps me share these stories with an ever-growing audience. Now, real quick, before we wrap up this episode, I want to take a moment to apologize to Majora and to you, the audience, for the technical difficulties I had during this interview. I recognize that virtual meetings and interviews are not expected to be perfect, but nevertheless, I thank Majora for her patience, grace, and generosity in sticking with me through those hiccups during the interview. I'm grateful she stayed with the conversation so I could share her powerful story with you. So thank you, Majora, and to all of you, sorry for those technical difficulties. Hopefully that won't happen again. We'll see. So with that, I hope you'll join me again for the next episode of Stories Sustain Us, which will air on August 26th. It'll be available at all the usual places, including at storiessustainus.com, wherever you listen to podcasts, and on YouTube. As always, thank you for being here today. Keep making the world a better place. Until next time, I'm Steven Schauer. Please take care of yourself and each other. Take care.